Hey, what's going on everyone? Mecha here, back with another Fire Emblem archetype tier list video, and this time we're going to take a look at some Pegasus Knights. In fact, we're going to take a look at a lot of Pegasus Knights. As you can see, we got a metric truckload of them. All of them are here. All of them, as far as I can tell. There's so many of these, there's like 5 rows worth of Pegasus Knights that I can't do them all in one video. So I've decided I'm going to tackle this group first, and then this group after. I split them up into like early and mid-late. It's kind of an arbitrary thing, so don't cling too hard to it. It's just a way for me to split them into 2 videos, but I'm going to tier out all these eventually. So we're going to start with the earlier group. I'm going to save the tier list, and I'm going to come back to it in another video with the ending of it. And yeah, let's just get into it, right? So Pegasus Knights are generally good units, a little bit investment heavy sometimes, but generally they're always useful because flight is just so good. I said this in the Wyvern video as well, but Pegasi, they tend to rely a little more on the flying part and a little less on the fighting part. Wyverns are usually good because they can both fight and fly, whereas some of these Pegasus Knights are only good because they can fly and they don't have much else to their name. But if you can make a Pegasus Knight that's also good at fighting, that still makes them really good. Depending on the game they might be in, they might be useful to visit villages or carry other units to safety, or just position themselves really well to fight like just the right amount of enemies to where they don't die. They kind of have to because they are weak to a couple of things. Most games they are weak to bows. In fact, I think they're weak to bows in all games. So you don't get a way to work around that for quite a while. Sometimes they're weak to wind magic. Sometimes they're bad against axes because they can only use lances for a while. So they have to be like very picky about what they face sometimes. But the ability to just ignore terrain makes that very easy, especially if their like stats get good. Pegasus Knights are almost always some of the best candidates for stat boosters. They usually want like defensive stat boosters like Angelic Robes and Draco Shields to boost their HP and defense, because like that just gives you such a huge return on your investment if you can make a Pegasus Knight survive more battles. Because if you can make a Pegasus Knight survive more battles and fight more things, then they get exponentially more useful. Someone like, say, a mercenary like Deke, for example, or even your Lord, they might become more durable if you give them those stat boosters, but they can't really move further in and kill more things generally. They are still limited by their low move, but flyers have the best mobility in the game. So if you can increase the amount of enemies they can face safely, that helps them so much. And that's going to work for a couple of these. Not all of them, but a couple of these. So what we have here first is, we have a lot of these. So if I forgot any, put them in the comments down below, and I'll have a chance to like bring them back for the next part. And this way I'll be sure not to miss any. But I'm only including Pegasus Knights and promoted Pegasus Knights, so Falcon Knights basically. So keep that in mind. So what we've got here is Sita, her different incarnations. Again, this tier list maker doesn't have FE1 portraits, and it doesn't really have a way to differentiate between FE3 Book 1 and FE3 Book 2. So we're going to have to work around that a little bit. We have FE Shadow Dragon Sita, FE11 Sita, New Mystery Sita, Katrina from FE3 Book 1, not the one from Book 2. Am I saying this correctly? No, I'm not. We need to talk about her Book 1 performance and her Book 2 performance, but she joins early in one and not in the other, so it's kind of confusing. But I had to split it some way, right? We have New Mystery Katrina, but not Shadow Dragon Katrina, because that one joins in like mid to late game. Same with Pala, joins early in FE3 Book 2, but not in Book 1, because things are weird sometimes. We have Claire from Gaiden and Echoes, same with Pala and Katrina again. I could honestly just make a list with just the White Wings, but I decided to leave off S because I already did literally an S tier list, and I already like discussed her pretty elaborately. So that's why she's not here, by the way, in case you're wondering. So that's why S is not here, but the other White Wings are here. Then we have Karen from FE... No, wait, we have Karen here. We have Fee from FE4, Generation 2. We have Femina, who is Fee's substitute. Then we have Karen from FE5, Shanna from FE6, also known as Thani sometimes, Florina from FE7, Fiora from FE7, Vanessa from FE8, Marcia from FE9. FE10-1 I decided to put in mid-late for some arbitrary reason. Then we have Sumia from FE... What's it called? Awakening. Not Cordelia, she's in the mid-to-late category. Again, relative to the others, I could honestly put Cordelia in this category too, but again, it's arbitrary. Don't get hung up on it. We got Tsubaki from Fates. I can tell you that will be a very interesting and long analysis. We got Hinoka from Fates, and then we have Ingrid from Three Houses. My rule for Three Houses characters is, I mean, almost all of them start as nobles or commoners, so they don't really count as one class, so I just decided to count their canon appearances. For example, if they are in a paralogue as quote-unquote green units that you can control, or if they appear as an enemy in like part 2 especially, I just look at those classes, whatever they appears there. And Ingrid always appears as a Pegasus Knight or like a Falcon Knight, or I think they're called Falcon. Yeah, they're called Falcon Knights in 3 houses. So that's why I went with her as Pegasus Knight. As far as I know, no one else in 3 houses qualifies as a Pegasus Knight. I think like Flame has the ability to certify as one right away, but that's really it. I don't think the game has any other Pegasus Knights worth including in this. But again, if I'm wrong, then just tell me, and I'll put them in this group later. So first, let us discuss the original OG Pegasus Knight, Sita, and all her different incarnations. So in FE1 and FE3, there are 2 really big advantages to Sita, and that she joins very early, but she has high weapon level. And in that game, weapon level is just a single stat that you can level up and have like, you have like a base and a growth in it, just like every other stat. And every weapon is just a certain weapon level, and if the weapon is below the character's weapon level, then you can use it. And this happens to be the case for Silver Lance. Sita can use it at base level, and as a result she has access to the strongest lance in the game until like the Gradivu. And yes, I just call it the Gradivu. So that helps her, that lets her get early kills if you want her to. I mean, you could also keep it on Jagen, you could trade it around, whatever you want, but it is definitely a boon for her. This changes in Shadow Dragon, of course. We have the traditional weapon rank system that we no longer have, or that we have now, excuse me. But in those games, her weapons are pretty good too. Don't get me wrong, but that definitely helped her in the early games. In that game, she can also promote the Draco Knight, just like pretty much every other Pegasus incarnation in those in the Arcanine games, which helps her a lot. It helps her a lot in Shadow Dragon, especially. I don't remember if the promotion bonuses in Shadow Dragon, like the original FE1 or FE3 Book 1, are as amazing, but I remember them being pretty good. So overall, I would say Sita is a solid A tier unit in her own games. These flyers in general are going to rank pretty high because, as I said, they're pretty good units in general. Next up, we have Shadow Dragon Sita. This might be one of the best, if not the best unit on this list. Shadow Dragon Sita is absolutely insane, and it's very weird because she's kind of fragile. Like, her HP and defense are not that great. Her defense is like 6, which is average for level 1, with an HP of like, it's like 18 or 16 or something. It's kind of low. Doesn't quite get one-shot by enemies though, other than archers. And she has one really big ace up her sleeve, and that's the Wing Spear. The Wing Spear in Shadow Dragon is absolutely busted. That's a pretty good base might, and you can forge it reasonably for like +4 or +5 might, and that will also, all that might will be tripled when she's facing an enemy she's effective against. And Shadow Dragon just has a lot of those. It has a lot of enemy knights and a lot of enemy cavaliers, and both of those are weak to the Wing Spear. So Sita will be able to one-hit kill, or at least one round kill, all those enemies. Most of the bosses are weak to those too, and Sita is one of the most accurate and most reliable options to deal with them. Even if she doesn't one-shot, her speed is, I think, without any... like, there's no one else who has that much speed as Sita. So she almost always doubles everything. And, like, if you make her Wing Spear one-hit kill things, you not only help her avoid counterattack, which would normally hit on her poor defense, but you also save weapon durability. Because imagine if the Wing Spear doubles someone to death, it's gonna take 2 uses, and it only has like 28. But if you forge it, it can potentially one-hit kill like 28 enemies. Maybe you won't one-hit kill 28 total, but the point is it's going to save durability, and that's really nice for her. And she's not that much more fragile than your other units are, like Cain and Abel are not that much more durable. They have like the advantage of having like swords against the enemy axe users early on, but other than that, they don't really have much on her. And flight is still pretty useful in Shadow Dragon. It sucks kind of that you cannot rescue drop in these games like you can in like the GBA games, for example, or FE5. But other than that, flight is still pretty useful. There's a lot of terrain in those games. A lot of ways Sita can help you cheese the game, fly over oceans and mountains, and hit on enemies before they can hit you. And she's also one of the best users to just... one of the best ways to fight bosses without fighting anything else. You can like cheese some maps by just flying over all the parts where the enemies are. And that can let you like kill the boss without ever getting an enemy range. And then you can just warp Marth and Seas if you wanted to. That's something she enables, and that's really good. So easily the best boss killer in the game, and probably the best combat unit in the game overall. There's a couple units who have like good combat too, but overall I would still say Sita has the best combat in the game. So that's an easy S tier. Now the Wing Spear is still available in Neo Mystery for Sita, and you can also still forge it in that game, but in that game it's much less of a dominant strategy because whereas in Shadow Dragon almost every enemy is weak to it, or at least every relevant enemy, I feel 12 is a lot more versatile with the enemies you face. You fight more axe users, which Sita is kind of bad against unless you like reclass her or give her swords on like the Falcon Knight promotion. She faces a lot more like just random enemies that aren't weak to Wing Spear. Like that game has actual enemy soldiers, for example, which Shadow Dragon doesn't really have outside of the normal mode, only prologue. So whereas on Hard 5 in Shadow Dragon, Sita is your best unit, In FE12 she can never really claim that. She also has less availability comparatively because she loses like the first 5 or 6 chapters. Which, you know, she still has good availability, don't get me wrong, otherwise she wouldn't be in early. But she's not as good, not nearly as good, but still pretty nice. I don't know exactly where to put it, like, I'd say about A or B tier is about right. I made like notes beforehand of where to put everyone, got some feedback from a couple people, so I've been adjusting it back and forth a little bit depending on what my guts tell me. I would say she's like either A or B tier. I'm not sure she's like actually an entire tier worse than this Sita. Some people have told me, like Rengor and friends, that like New Mystery Sita on like the higher difficulty, she's not quite part of the best squad, like say Pala, spoilers, is, and like the Avatar and Marth and God knows who else, like Luke, which is like right below that. So that's still like A tier, but not like the best top 12 units or so. Like, so take that as you will. Still pretty good as she does, like still pretty good at what she does, but not quite capable of one-killing as much as she used to. Then we have Katrina from FE3 Book 2, but not Book 1, because in Book 1 it's basically like Shadow Dragon. She joins like halfway through the game. I'm just going to talk about her when she joins in FE3 Book 2, which is like Chapter 2, which is super early in the game. And in that chapter alone she's already very good, because that map is like a giant shape of forest that you can fly over, and she's your only flyer at that point. And from there it just gets better from there. Like the Pegasus Knight and Wyvern class is just broken in that game, and it continues in New Mystery, don't get me wrong. But I always found it very noticeable how good she is in FE3 Book 2. I think she's amazing. She has stats good enough to like one-round enemies, or like come close to one-rounding early on. And in that game, the enemies barely grow at all. So like the FE3 and FE1 are pretty easy overall. Because the enemies just barely improve, and they're pretty easy to one-round after a while. So with a couple of level ups, and Katrina has really good growth, like really good growths. I don't remember them offhand, but I remember her strength, skill, and speed are all just outstanding enough. And the Wyvern Rider promotion should also fix her defense if needed. So I would definitely put her like up here in S tier, I think. She's pretty goddamn powerful that game. And like honestly the same goes for this Katrina. My current Let's Play of New Mystery, it's basically over. It might be over at the moment we're watching this, depending on when I upload this video and the last New Mystery video. Katrina is just insane in that game, but mine got really blessed. Like mine had like 4 or 5 cap stats by the end of it. She killed almost everything. She was so durable, so good. And normally she's still good, but not nearly as blessed. So I'm trying not to be biased here. I'm not sure which incarnation of her is better. This one has more options through reclass, but everyone in that game has it, so it doesn't really count in her favor very much. But it does make her look better when she's like, you can like reclass into Paladin to avoid your bow weakness and like indoor maps and stuff, and like increase your resistance like that. Or you can use the Illusion Whip to promote a Falcon Knight or something like that to have more res as a flyer and still have more speed cap. Because that's one big thing that holds her back sometimes, is the Wyvern class in New Mystery has 23 speed cap. That can kind of suck, but like it doesn't sound like anything specific to Katrina, but the point is Katrina is so amazing, I'm running out of things to talk about her. She's super good. I would say maybe it's more like this, but it can go either way, I think. Now, if you thought Katrina was good, can I introduce you to our Lord and Savior, Pala, from FE3. Honestly, we should talk about this Pala too, because FE3 Book 2 and, of course, New Mystery Pala are both super good, so I guess I'll just put them both somewhere. But they're both like so good. She's like almost as good as Sita, honestly. And I'll put this one over here too, because like she joins one more chapter later in Chapter 3 of FE3 Book 2 and New Mystery, but she's still so absurdly overpowered. She has, I think, by far the best base in the game, especially relative to her join time. There are some characters later on that match her personal bases, but they join like 10 chapters later, and Pala has that before that. She's like on pre-promotes, but you can still give her a couple of levels up if you want. It's like if you get Milady in FE6, but like 5 chapters earlier or something, or like 10 chapters earlier maybe. It's stupid how good she is. So durable, so powerful. Draco Knight's broken. You can promote her whenever you want, and she'll still be good. Of course, the longer you wait, the better she will be long term. I think the idea with Pala originally was that they gave her like a high speed base but a low growth, so the idea was that she would like fall off. But then her base speed is like 16 or something, in a game where enemies will often not even reach like 4 attack speed sometimes, depending on like difficulty and whether you're talking like the Ancient Book 3 or FE3 Book 2 or the New Mystery games, New Mystery game. Because either way, Pala will double pretty reliably, and if not, there are speed wings available. You can buy like 3 speed wings. So if she's like close to a doubling threshold but not quite there, you can always boost her a little bit. But generally, she won't need it in a growth playthrough. She's gonna be fine no matter what. If you've seen Don's 0% growth run of Pala, you know just how much having no growth impacts her. Like, he just super boosts Pala because she's by far the best investment to pick, and then she just goes ham on every single map. She kills everything in 0% growth. It's unbelievable. And then she can also like level up. So her speed growth is bad, but pretty much everything else about her is so good that it doesn't even matter. She is broken beyond belief. Flexible pre-promotes, and then like just durable flyer is excellent. Such a good unit. So good. So good. I do think like in the end game, I think Katrina ends up a little better on average, but Pala starts off with such a huge lead that I think Pala is better overall. Even though she's one chapter later, her bases are better by enough to make it worth it. Now, Claire from Gaiden and Echoes, I'm gonna say might be one of the worst Pegasus Knights on this list. She's not unusable, but she's the most trouble to use because in that game, Pegasus Knights aren't that great. Generally, mobility is not as important in those games because you have a warp staff that you can not infinitely use in like the original, but you can pretty much infinitely warp in Echoes if you have Cleric Fae to heal your what's-her-face Silk with. So mobility matters less, and also she can fly ahead of the pack, but the problem if she does that is she probably gets her butt kicked and needs to go back and get healed or something, because she's just not that good at fighting enemies on her own. She's kind of weak at like every single aspect that is important to fighting except for speed. Her strength is pretty bad, her HP is pretty bad, her defense is pretty bad, and like this is a common problem for Pegasus Knights, but it especially affects Claire in my opinion. And she can use like stronger weapons to compensate for low strength, but then she sometimes doesn't double or even gets doubled. In Gaiden and Echoes, the speed thresholds are very fragile, because you only need one attack speed, higher or lower, to double or get doubled. So Claire can go from doubling to getting doubled very easily if you equip the wrong weapons, like a Steel Lance. It's not going to work on her. That doesn't work for like a lot of these other Pegasus Knights, but this especially hurts Claire, because if she just fights with her normal lance with like no equipment, she's just not going to do much damage. The one like redeeming factor for her is the Falcon Knight class, especially in Gaiden. The original is super good. If you promote to a Falcon Knight there, and like it takes a long time to get her there, but if she gets there, she gets effective weapon on monsters, and she just one-shots them, or at least one rounds. Her strength might be too low to actually one-shot, but it doesn't matter as long as you double attack, and it's fairly easy to make her double attack, if you want her to be. It's just, it kind of comes at a cost of her might. But against monsters it doesn't matter, because she has triple effectiveness. She's super strong against them. So that's Gaiden Echoes, or that's Gaiden Claire. But Echoes Claire, I don't really have a whole lot of redeeming factors for her. There's like a lot of other units that would like lances too, like Matilda and what's his face, her husband, whose name escapes me right now, and Lucas, and then Forsyth is bad, but if you're using him, he wants them too. So even if you have like some kind of good weapon to give, like a one of those horse slayers, like a forged horse slayer, I think it has like a different name in that game. But the point is, it's not spectacular to rely on that because someone else could use it too. Clive, that's his name, Clive. So for that reason, I'm gonna put her in like C tier. I still think this is like if I had to rate this on a scale out of 10, it'd be like a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 for this tier. So she's still usable. You can train her and it'll be fine. But the amount of investment it takes to make her good is so much less than the investment it takes to make these units good. And that's why I think both Gaiden Claire and Echoes Claire belong in the C tier. Now Pala and Katrina show up once again in Echoes just to dominate another game. They already dominated both versions of FE3 Book 2 and its remake. And now they're back with a vengeance to kill some more Echoes people. And they show up on Celica's part this time. And Celica's part without them would be the slowest game to play in the series probably, because almost every map is so heavy on terrain, especially the later maps in part 3 and 4. So it's really good to have these two here to fly over. I already explained how broken the Falcon Knight class is in the original Gaiden, and it's still pretty good in Echoes, but not as broken. But just the fact that they fly over things like swamps and forests and everything else, and they still have stats that are way beyond what everyone else. Like especially Pala is again super dominant, very close to promotion at base level, honestly, or like relatively close to promotion anyway, and just such good stats, and don't need like super strong lances at all. But if you can get them, even better. But even without them, I found them like pretty sufficient in Gaiden. I've only played Echoes once, I gotta admit, so I'm not the best expert on them. So I'm not entirely sure where to fit them. I would say they're like around this probably. I don't know about Pala in like Book 2. That game is like so sillily easy that it might be justifiable to have Pala and Katrina as bigger difference makers in those games. But I'm not entirely sure. I like them a lot. Let me just put it that way. I think they're really, really good. It's really telling when I have 7 units in S tier and a lot of them are the same person, I gotta say. It's a white wing world, let's put it that way. Sita's feeling very lonely right now. Alright, let's talk about some different Pegasus Knights. I think we've done enough Arcanea for now. So, here we have Karen. No, I keep calling her Karen because they look so similar and I don't play FE4 very much. I played FE5 like 100 times, but I haven't played FE4 that much. But I am doing we're finishing up the Let's Play with Maddening right now for FE4 Gen 2, so I do know who this is. This is Fee. He's actually one of my favorites. I kind of feel bad now. I like Fee a lot, not especially because he's like the best unit ever or anything. I just think her design is super cool, and I think she's fun to use. FE4 though, I've said this before on the Wyvern tier list and probably somewhere else too. It's not a great game to be a flyer because in that game, ignoring terrain is not that important. The direct road from castle to castle usually leads over roads, and roads will make other units more mobile than your flyers, because if a cavalry with like 9 moves over a road for 9 tiles, they will actually have +3 move, because road gives extra boosts every time you move over it. It's like a speed up button for your mounted unit. So someone like Sigurd is going to move 12 tiles every turn over roads, and I mean, someone like Karen or someone like Erin in her case, Erinus, they will only move like 8 or 9 tiles depending on whether promoted or not and what flying class they are. So that kind of sucks. It's a weird world, but this is a world where flyers actually fall behind and they're better off going for like side objectives. But FE4 doesn't have a whole lot of those. It usually just has villages that are getting burned down. So it's nice to save them. You can send your flyer at villages that are being burned down. If you give them the Thief Sword, you can fly up to a bandit, use the Thief Sword to take their 5,000 gold. You kill them, and then you have another village available for whoever wants it with, I don't know, maybe like 4,000 gold or 3,000 gold. Whoever wants it. You can take it with the flyer, but they usually don't need it. It's very nice. They basically get other people gold. It's kind of like a thief. But that is pretty much the extent of their usefulness. They can do some other things. Promoted Pegasus Knights in that game, I think they're still called Falcon Knights. They can use staves, but only C rank. So they're usually limited to using like Mend or Heal or Return, which are good useful staves, but they can't use like Recover or Physic or Fortify. Stuff like that, like the Rescue Staff. They can't use those, unfortunately. If they could use Rescue, that'd be really good. That'd be super nice to get other units across like a lot of tiles faster. Like being able to rescue your dancer with a flyer would be nice. Sometimes it wouldn't even help that much though, because they would still have to contend with the fact that other units can move over roads. Someone like a Master Knight Leaf or Lachesis would still be able to use the rescue staff better, but that's just me like theoretically waxing. The point is, Fee doesn't really have that much utility as a flyer, and the same goes for Erin when I'm going to rate her. So for now, and like, you might wonder why I'm putting Fee in early and Erin in late. Or mid-late. Again, it's arbitrary, but Fee joins very early on in Generation 2. She joins in Chapter 6, which is the first one. Erinus joins about halfway through Generation 1, and I consider FE4 Gen 1 and 2 basically separate games for the sake of this tier list. So Erinus, or Fee, I think she's a little better than Claire, because as annoying as FE4's problems with flyers are, at least Fee doesn't require a whole lot of maintenance to be good or useful. She can get through the arena just fine, just like almost everyone else in Gen 2. And if she gets into a fight, she can hold her own. She can use the Brave Lance, as she's like one of the only people who wants to use it, other than like Finn maybe. And Finn doesn't really need it, so Fee does pretty well with it. She can also use like Brave Swords. It doesn't even really matter who her dad is. Like, this is one of the child units, but it really doesn't matter who her dad is. That's the funny part. She's just kind of fine with whatever. Like, if her dad is Claude, then she's probably at her worst. But even then, you can salvage her with like a magic sword. So yeah, she's always gonna have to pursuit, and she's always gonna have added after promotion. So she's like, she cannot be screwed basically. Now, the one way to screw Fee is by having her not exist and instead get Femina. And if you don't know who this is, I don't blame you, because this is one of the most boring substitutes to get. There is no point in using her. She doesn't even have pursuit, which is very, very bad. Her stats don't really stand out anyway. They're worse than an optimized Fee, or even an unoptimized Fee. But the lack of pursuit is just bad. She just has added, and that's really it. So she cannot double reliably unless you give her the Brave Lance, but even then she'll do less damage than someone with pursuit. I don't think she can one-round kill with a Brave Lance or a Brave Sword. Very unfortunate, and yeah, pretty much bad. Pretty much just bad. I wouldn't put her quite in D tier. She's not that bad, but like around here somewhere. The Thief Sword utility is still kind of nice, but she's gonna end up at like the bottom. She might be the worst unit on this list. Might just be. I don't really have a lot to say about her. I've done full playthroughs with substitutes before, long ago, but I don't remember anything about her standing out at all. Not that I tried very hard, but there's not even a point in giving her like a really good weapon like the Brave Sword with a bunch of kills on her or anything, because she's gonna use it worse than everyone else, and she has the least reach from your mounted units, and her combat is just not spectacular either way. And Brave weapons don't even stack with Adept in FE4. Like, a Brave Sword just gives you 100% adept rate, so even that is kind of like wasting her adept in a way, which is, yeah, it's not optimal. It's not good. No bueno, not a good unit. Yeah, one of the worst flyers in this series, and one of the worst substitutes in the game. Then we have Karen, who, this is actually Karen, this is the actual green-haired Pegasus Knight that I wanted to mention like 5 times already. And Karen is pretty nice. She is the flyer, I would say, that is the most reliant on the flying parts. Like, I think her combat is pretty insignificant. It can be made good again, because everything can be made good in FE5 with scrolls and other kinds of abuse and just playing slowly, feeding her kills. But there really is no need to make Karen good, because the flying alone is so good. You get Karen as an unmounted Pegasus Knight in indoor maps, where she's not spectacular, to be honest. I mostly use her for capture bait. Like, take away her weapons, put her in range of enemies. Enemies will be like, hey, free Karen, and it will capture her. And then the enemy has their stats halved and you kill them. Kind of like what you do with Lara. And you can do it with a lot of other units as well. But Karen's pretty good for it. Other than that, she's like, she can fight mages, I guess, because her magic is high, and magic doubles as resistance in that game. But her strength is like very low, so she's not going to do much damage. She's going to need someone else to like combo up with her. And the funny thing about Karen's weapon ranks too is like you get like a javelin in the master chapters, but once you go outdoors and you might go on a Pegasus, she cannot even use that javelin. She can only use iron lances. So I think they tried to make it very clear. Karen is not meant for combat. Karen is meant for flying. Like the moment you go outside, they tell you Karen is like, I can carry people across the city. That's my purpose. I can carry people across the city walls so we can escape. That's what she should do. And she's pretty good at that. She cannot carry people that are very heavy like Dashin, but no one can. That's not her fault. She's, yeah, that's not any different from anyone else. But she can carry someone like Leaf to a destination, or maybe one of your thieves, or one of your better fighters, like maybe Fergus wants to be somewhere faster, maybe Nana wants to be somewhere faster. So she can carry those just fine. She won't lose any speed because the game treats her as having 20 builds due to being a mounted unit when it comes to carrying people. If you're confused about that, I have like a Thracia mechanics guide that's like perfectly fit for explaining this. But the point is, Karen can carry people, and that's pretty nice. There's like a couple items in the game that you can only really get with Karen because she's your only flyer for a pretty long time. Until chapter 14, she's your only flyer. You can use her to get certain villages very easily. In chapter 6 and chapter 10, that's the one with all the ballistas and Fred and Olwen. I give her the leg ring always in my playthroughs, not because I like her that much, but because it makes it very easy to do some things with her, whereas without the leg ring, it kind of gets complicated and easier to make mistakes. So for example, getting the bottom house in chapter 10 is much easier with leg ring Karen than doing it with someone else that's like being rescue dropped over there and they have to get out of there and stuff, and like the ballistas are kind of annoying. So that's what I like leg ring Karen for a lot, but that's like a personal preference. But even without the leg ring, I would say she's solidly like A tier just for the flyer utility alone. She's gonna end up at like the bottom of A tier, I think, overall. But she's pretty damn useful for that, I think. She's, yeah, I like her a lot for that utility. There are problems with her. Making her combat good is just not worth it. But if you want to do it, there's like a Wrath manual you can give her. There's not that many people in FE5 that kind of want Wrath, so it's pretty nice. And Paragon manual can also work on her, but again, like most games, I would say invest in your Pegasus Knight to make them great. Like there's a couple of them coming up that I would say are good investments for XP and skills if you have them. But for Karen, I just say it's not worth it. Doesn't mean she cannot be good. My first FE5 playthrough ever, I scroll abused her, I gave her so much strength, and she was super powerful. But now that I've played FE5 a lot, I realized that it's not the easiest path to victory. It's not the most optimal path to victory. And if you want to trivialize this game, making Karen good at combat is not really the best way to go about it. But it's still like viable. It's still fun. Next up on the list is Shanna from Fire Emblem 6, the Binding Blade. Now, Shanna used to be a very, very underrated Pegasus Knight, and everyone just kind of wrote it off because of the usual problems with Pegasus Knights is low HP, low strength, low defense, arrow weakness. And FE6, I gotta be honest, it is pretty dire to be like weak at combat. It kind of sucks. Arrows are triple effectiveness against her, which is something that Karen has to deal with, for example. But a lot of these other Pegasus Knights don't. They have to deal with double effectiveness instead. So that makes her look a little weaker by comparison. FE6 enemies are very tough. So when you like perform like Shanna does, it's easy to make it look bad because you just like single digit damage. But flyer utility in that game is better than ever. She can rescue drop people. This is something that other units don't have that she can do that like stands out. And I don't just mean like these Pegasus Knights that are in games that kind of rescue, but like in FE6, you get like mounted units, you get the Cavaliers, but the flyer utility combined with the rescuing utility is super nice to have in several chapters. Dropping someone like Rutger over a wall in chapter 11, for example, The Western Isle maps is super nice to kill enemies early. And her combat is like... One big difference for her is early promotion. If you can promote her before the Western Isles, regardless of her level, she's going to perform really well for a short time, because she will be able to use swords and have 8 move and fly over things and have enough speed to double. And that's a golden combination, because there's so much water in the Western Isle arc that you can just fly over and like get to places early that you normally can't. She 2-rounds pirates generally. Even though her strength looks kind of bad, she can still 2-round pirates most of the time with an iron sword. Weaken them for others or set them up for ourselves. And because she double attacks, it's pretty easy to get her to D and then later even C swords to be able to use like Killing Edges or Worm Slayers, which will increase her offense like tenfold against a lot of enemies. You get Killer Lances kind of early in FE6. You can buy them in chapter 13, and when doubling with Killer Lances, she has like I'd say roughly a 50-50 shot at one-shotting random enemies through crits. She does have like, she cannot one-round a lot of enemies. In fact, the only way she one-rounds a lot of enemies is like with the Silver Lance or maybe the Gat Lance sometimes. But I think in FE6 a lot of player units don't one-round. Like unless you're like Milady or Percival or using like Rutger with a crit weapon or something, you're generally not one-rounding in FE6. So she can combine with other units pretty fine for getting kills, and that is just fine. And her durability, it's not great, but it gets underrated a little bit. She can actually survive some things. Like in the early game, there's like Steel Axe Fighters, for example, or like Iron Axe Fighters. She can survive those. Her base defense is like 6. It's not great, but it's not bad. And then her HP is fine too. She's an okay candidate for Angelic Robes if you have one of those. People tend to give it to Roy, but Shanna's a pretty good candidate too if you want. After the Western Isles, I think her combat is like okay. Some units do start one-rounding. I did mention Percival and Milady, but she can still contribute just fine. This is basically like a summary of a video I did on Shanna. I think it was like one of the first Pitfalls videos. It was basically like a predecessor of the waifu videos that I do nowadays. So I did like an elaborate analysis on why she's actually pretty good. That said, my most recent Iron Man run is like kind of didn't like her as much as I used to. Part of it was because I got her killed through some dumb like way. I gave her a javelin and I had her rescue Wendy of all people because I was using her to flex, and then she died to a pirate that doubled her because I forgot to equip the Iron Sword instead. That was super dumb. That was my fault. But in that whole run, I felt like Shanna was a little underwhelming compared to what I'm used to. So I'm not as much into Shanna hype train anymore, but I do think she's like maybe like under the top 10 best units in FE6. And then top 10 is like a pretty wide range of units, so that sounds a lot better than it might be. But I still think she's pretty good. Just not like A tier, but like B or low A tier probably. Like around, in a way, she's like Karen, where her flyer utility is the best part of her. But I do think her combat is a little better than Karen, so I'm gonna put her like around here somewhere. That seems fair to me. I could see her down here too. You could argue that way. You can also argue her down a little bit, because to be fair, they are good at like their flying utility and everything. But Karen especially doesn't have much beyond that. Whereas Sita, she does have like good combat in these games. I do think she stands out a little more. Next up, we have Florina from Fire Emblem 7. Probably the most well-known Pegasus Knight, at least back in the day, because FE7 was like almost everyone's first game back in the day. And she's pretty good. It kind of depends on how you get her. And what I mean by that is, if you play Limb mode first, then Florina gets a bunch of access to a bunch of free XP, and is a potential candidate for the Energy Ring and the Angelic Robe in that mode. And that makes her really good. Like, if you can get Florina to say level 10 with the Robe and the Energy Ring, I would easily like put her maybe like up here, at like A tier at worst, and her portrait is really small, or like probably up here honestly. But the problem is, there's another way to play FE7, which a lot of people do, and I can't blame them for it, which is not playing Limb mode because it's a boring tutorial, and instead you would be starting on Hector mode. And in Hector mode, if you have Florina join without playing Limb mode beforehand, she joins at level 3 instead of level 10, say level 10. It could be like, you get my point, right? She's not trained, no stat boosters, and pretty underwhelming level 3 stats. And at that point, I would honestly put her like here, or maybe even here, honestly. So I gotta find like an in-between for that, like lower S tier or higher C tier is probably where I put her. Maybe like lower B tier is more accurate for like Hector mode. It's not like she's not untrainable, but her damage output is really poor. One thing that does help her particularly though is in FE7 enemy weapons. In the English version at least, they have double weapon effectiveness, not triple. So an iron bow generally doesn't kill her in one hit. A silver bow probably will. A steel bow might also kill her in one hit in the early games, but yeah, the iron bows probably won't, so that helps her a bit. Still doesn't like facing arrows though. Still really doesn't like it. So I'd say as an average, I put her like around here somewhere. I'd say she's like between like super good and super bad. It's like either here or here, I think. So we're gonna go with like here for now. And we have Fiora from the same game. When I play FE7, especially when I'm not playing Limb mode, I actually really like Fiora as a unit as opposed to using Florina, because as I said, Florina joins very under level, but Fiora joins at level 7. So you only have to train her for 3 levels before you can promote her, or you can keep training her, whichever way you lean. The last FE7 playthrough I did was like the full Let's Play that I did. I was playing negative growth, so that was not a great representation of what units are like. But I do remember Fiora being pretty useful there for flyer utility, being able to promote her fairly quickly, but you can also just keep training her and she'll be fine. Like, her strength growth is a little worse than Florina's, but her base is about the same as what Florina would be at the same level, and her growth is only a little bit worse. So in reality, they'll be like very close together when it comes to strength. And her speed is good, her resistance is really high. Skill is fine enough to where she can hit things, of course. Durability is fine, not tanky, like about as durable as Isadora, but with less weapon triangle control and no terrain bonuses, so that sometimes doesn't really work out. But she's like not made of glass. She's not Lucius, she's not Urk, she's not Lyn. She's like, she can take a couple hits if you need to. You just have to be a little careful. But good to invest in, and good enough in FE7. I would say she's a lot better than Hector mode Florina, but not better than like Limb mode Florina. So a little better, I guess, like around here somewhere, maybe here. I don't know. She does have her issues. Her strength is not like great, and she doesn't like one round reliably until you get killer lances, and even then it's like you need to crit. But she does decent enough. But I wouldn't say she's as good as this Sita, for example. Not nearly as good. Then we have Vanessa from Fire Emblem 8, the Sacred Stones. This is one I really like. Joins really early in chapter 2, off the top of my head, along with Molder the Boulder. And right away she can help you save Ross, and then maybe get like the Pure Water Village in the bottom left, and just keep cruising from there. Very easy to train flyer. I mean, FE8 is very easy, but I would still say she's easily one of the better units in that game. Like top 3 probably. I generally recommend you use Vanessa if you want to get through FE8 very quickly. FE8, I would say it starts out being dominated by Seth, but in the late chapters the terrain gets especially rough, and Seth handling everything is not very efficient, so you generally want another good combat unit, and a better combat unit better be a flyer. And you can either train Vanessa very early and have her dominate the whole game after some training up, or you can leave her aside and you can train Tana instead, and then Cormag is also a pretty good mid to late flyer. That also gets the job done, and maybe Mur in the late game, because Seth on his own is going to take forever to do everything on his own. So you want to have a flyer of some kind. I think Vanessa's a pretty good one if you invest in her, if you're willing to invest in her. She does have some durability issues. I'd say she's a little more durable than Fiora and Florina from what it feels like. I haven't compared their stats, but I never had as much problem with them. Not as much problems with Vanessa staying alive, maybe just because the enemies are so weak, but they are also in FE7. I don't know. Probably personal experience, but the point is, Vanessa turns out pretty good. One big difference between like these two Pegasus Knights and even this Pegasus Knight is Vanessa can promote into Wyvern Knight instead of Falcon Knight, which I like a lot for her. It gives her, particularly I believe it gives her more defense and constitution. And the constitution is nice. It makes her able to use Iron Lances without losing any speed, so she will be able to double like Mercenaries and Myrmidons using Iron Lances if you really need her to, depending on like how hard you train her and how much you promote her. Like, Pegasus Knights generally have really good speed, but I've always found Vanessa's speed like outstandingly, disgustingly good, to the point where she can double those fast sorties. Like, I don't think Shanna can do that reliably, for example. I don't think Florina can do that unless she uses like a Slim Lance, but Vanessa just needs to promote and like have a decent number of speed levels under her belt, which she usually gets, and then she's good to double those, and that's really good. And then FE8, just like most GBA Fire Emblems, is just rescue dropping is really good. There's a lot of terrain to fly over, and she's just very flexible. Does have to face triple arrow weaknesses, but other than that, I don't think she really has any issues. So I would put her in like a solid A tier. I think she's like around here somewhere. I would formally have put her in S tier, maybe. Maybe that's where she still belongs. I think she's really, really good, but I don't think she's as broken as these units. Vanessa is definitely a tier worse than, for example, Seth, who is an easy S tier unit. So I would say Vanessa is like fine here. Another really good one is Marcia from Fire Emblem 9, Path of Radiance. FE10 Marcia joins a little weirdly. Radiant Dawn is very weird. But Marcia definitely joins early enough to where I could put her in this group. I feel like Marcia likes food expletives. She calls people like monkeys or something. It's like, what the hell? But she's also just very good. FE9 has double arrow effectiveness on her, so she can survive those very easily. It also has a full guard available fairly early in the game, considering how late you usually get something like a Delphi shield or a Philly shield. But that one's like, the full guard is like chapter 16 or like chapter 15 or something. It's very early. And from there she just doesn't care about arrows. One of the great things about FE9 is you can really snowball a unit very quickly through bonus experience. So she might start like a little underleveled compared to what the other units are at, but she can catch up to no time. And you get so much bonus experience in like the English version of hard mode that it's like no trouble at all to get her good. And she is by far the best target for your investment for getting her bonus experience. So she just goes off and never stops. Like there's a reason the speedruns use Marcia. Yeah, she's just very, very solid overall. I think her strength is like decent enough to maybe, yeah, she should probably get 2-round KOs, because at least 2 KOs and maybe 1-round KOs, because FE9 enemies are pretty weak. I have my experience like changed a little bit because Mangs, like I played Maniac mode along with Mangs on his channel, and that version Marcia is a little worse comparatively because her issues are a little more showing, because the enemies are stronger, but I don't think it's bad enough to make Marcia like bad. I would say she's like around here somewhere. I'm not sure, but I think this is about right for her. She's pretty good. Maybe even better than Vanessa. She's like better overall. Her strength is like a little better. The bonus experience part is like, it's easier to make her good with bonus experience than making her good through like stat boosters, I think. I think the stat boosters that she gets are like a little more in demand than bonus experience overall. And I think there's enough bonus experience to go around anyway. Like you don't have to go all in on her bonus experience. You can give her bonus experience and then also train a unit like Tormod or someone on a level scrub, like, I don't know, Makalov or something. That's fine, that's doable. In fact, I might even be underrating her. I might just put her like up here somewhere in the S tier, because honestly, she's like super, super good. She's like super good. Alright, next meme is Sumia from Awakening. Sumia is great all around, I feel like. One great thing about Awakening is you can pair up people and they will become broken over time, and Sumia is no exception. One of the best pair up partners for Frederick, I feel like. It's pretty amazing how you can just fix her issue with just one quick pair up. Of course, everyone gets good with a Frederick pair up, but I think she especially benefits because her weak points are basically her strength and defense, and both of those are instantly fixed. And at that point, you just have a flyer that can one-round things in hard mode, at least. I don't know exactly how good she's on Lunatic, but I think if you're gonna train a unit in Lunatic that isn't Robin or Crom, then Sumia is probably your best pick, just because of how easily fixable her stats are, how well her speed keeps up with the enemies, how well she can double. She's pretty goddamn strong with that thing, but that is a resource she needs to be good, so that does duck a couple points from her. But overall, I would say she's very solid. I'm not going to get into whether she's better than Cordelia or not right now, but she's one of the best early joiners for sure, one of the easiest units to train. I would say she's like A tier maybe, like not as great all around as these or even these girls, but still pretty goddamn strong. And pretty easy to pick up and use in both hard and Lunatic, I think. I've never finished like the cancer that is Lunatic, but if I did, I would probably either solo it with Robin or train Sumia. One of those two things. Alright, these two are going to be pretty short because I don't know too much about them. The only Fates routes I have played right now are Conquests on hard mode and then normal mode for a bit, and then Revelation I played on hard mode, so I'm not the biggest expert on Fates, and then I don't have any plans to play Birthright because I honestly feel like that should be pretty boring. So I'm not the biggest expert on Fates. Help me out a little bit. I'd ask for feedback on these. People have told me Tsubaki is overall trash in every single game he's in, so I'm probably gonna end up putting him like around here somewhere. At least in Revelation I thought he looked like trash, and I'm probably not wrong about that. It's pretty goddamn bad bases. He just couldn't hurt anything. And again, Revelation not the best representation, but I know he's not much better in Birthright. Hinoka a little better. As far as I know, she has like good stats all around, and you could probably make her good in Fates some kind. And we'll put her like around here somewhere. That seems fine. Around like A tier, I think. That seems fine. Like we'll just put her like around here somewhere. I don't know if she's like really better than Fiora or Florina, but let me know what you think. I know in Fates you can also fix people through pair up of some kind, but it's a little less broken in that game than it is in Awakening. And flyer utility in Birthright, I guess it's okay. I mean, the game is all about, from what I can tell, it's either you want to seize or you want to route. And for routing, if you have a strong flyer that can kill everything, that is obviously the best thing you can have. So that should be pretty good. And she joins early enough to where you can fix any of her problems before they get out of hand. Yeah, seems good. But as you can tell, my analysis on Hinoka is not razor sharp, so feel free to fill me in a little bit in the comment section. Last but not least, we have Ingrid, and this is another, like, it's kind of like with Florina, where she's very different depending on whether you do Limb mode or Hector mode. I feel like Ingrid is very different depending on whether you're playing Blue Lions or you're playing some other house, because in Blue Lions Maddening, I felt like she was one of the worst units from that house. Like, sure, she joins early, and you can like change her whatever you want, get her good weapon ranks and stuff. But the problem is she's just very, very weak at base level. I felt she couldn't really hurt much. Her only redeeming factor early on was like two things. She had Tempest Lance, which does a lot of damage as a combat art. It's like, I feel like it's better than Smash and Wrath Strike, compared to like the Lance and the Axe and Sword versions of that combat art. And then she can give bonuses to people like Felix and Dimitri. Like, you can give them bonuses through linked attacks, which is also pretty nice. But she doesn't really use those well herself. She can be like part of like a couple of enemies that like a couple of units that are ganging up on an enemy, and that's kind of nice, but that's not great utility. I actually feel like out of house Ingrids, where you recruit her in from another house like the Golden Deer or the Black Eagles, that is a lot stronger. Then she comes with like reasonable weapon levels. You don't have to sit through her awful early game. And a level up that units gets on out of house recruitments, they are usually kinder to units than the in-house level ups. Not because of like bad luck or anything, but because the growths that they use when recruited from out of house are better than the growths they use when you're training them in-house, if that makes sense. So the later you recruit Ingrid, the better her stats will be. And Ingrid automatically qualifies herself as a Pegasus Knight. That is her intermediate class, and that happens from like level 10 onwards. So I think it's like chapter 6 onwards. So if you recruit her from then, you could just recruit her as a Pegasus Knight and get a pretty good one. So I don't know how to weigh this. I also think she's like, in Blue Lions Maddening, she looks pretty bad in-house, but if you're playing like hard mode, for example, or even New Game Plus, her issues are a lot less of an issue. She's actually like pretty fine in those. So I don't really know what the rate here. It's like a lot of things to combine. Assuming you get her out of house, I think it's okay to put her like around here somewhere. Maybe the like in-house Blue Lions Maddening part of her weighs her down a little bit, but this is what I feel comfortable with overall. But confident is a big word. It's unfortunate that 3 houses doesn't have much flyer utility, as in like rescuing and dropping, but being a flyer in 3 houses is still super good. The maps are super big and movement heavy, and the fact that you can stride and dance and warp her doesn't decrease it in its value, and if anything, it increases her. She has a very easy path to the Broken Wyvern Lord class that you can give her, but she can also be like an okay paladin if you really want her to be one, but like a flying class is just the best for her, like either Falcon Knight or Wyvern, whatever you like feel like suits her needs. I've heard a lot of people like talk about her strength being bad, and then they make her Wyvern and that kind of fixes it. That can make the difference. I think that difference is like only 2 or 3 points overall throughout the whole game. So I think that's also like a part luck and a part in and out house recruitment, like I talked about earlier. I think that's the biggest difference maker. But it can make the difference. Ingrid's strength can get pretty low sometimes if you don't make her like a class that boosts that strength a bit. But overall, I would say Ingrid is fairly solid, but not so much as an in-house unit. Like, even remember in my Blue Lions New Game Plus run, she was not spectacular early on. It took a long time to get her going. But out of house recruitments, she's pretty good. So that's the early game Pegasus Knights, and that's already a pretty long video. So join me next time as I fix mistakes that I've made here, as well as tier these other Pegasus Knights, because there's a lot more of these to go. It doesn't help that almost every game has like 3 of these. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section. Let me know what archetypes you want me to analyze next, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out, and goodbye.